Once in royal David's city stood our lowly cattle shed, where a mother laid her baby in a manger for his bed. That mother mild, Jesus Christ, her little child. He came down to earth from heaven, who is God and Lord of all. And his shelter was a stable, and his cradle was a stall. With the poor and meek and lowly lived on earth a Savior holy. For he is a childhood's pattern, day by day like the sea grew. He was little, weak and helpless, tears and scars like the sea knew. And he filleth for us kindness, and he shareth in our gladness. And our eyes at last shall see him through his own redeeming love. For the child so dear and gentle is our Lord in heaven above. And he leads his children on to the place where he is gone. Not in that where all is stable, within arms and standing by, we shall see him bright in heaven, set at last like heaven high. When the stars his children round, all in rapture shall wait around.
Welcome one and all to Christmas Eve. This is different, to be sure, but what a gift it is to be with you, even this way, welcoming the hope of Christmas. I'll start off with gratitude to Michael Galib, our music director, for an incredible amount of work and talent getting us to tonight. And to Lee Cowan, our director of religious education, whose patience and wisdom and humor are welcome additions. Thank you, choir, for your time and talents. Thank you to all who participated in the service. Thank you to our communications committee for getting the word out, to our facilities team for moving mountains to accommodate the taping of this, and for so many others who made the service possible. As always, whether you've been here for 20 years or whether tonight is your first time, you're welcome here. Each of you and all of you are welcome here. If you are new and you'd like more information, please email me. You'll find my email on our website. Our service tonight will be followed by coffee hour, and hopefully you'll join us for that as well. And as I've said for the last few weeks, we'll do candle lighting during coffee hour, so you might want to come prepared for that. And now, let us pause, breathing in the love that surrounds us, the beauty of the season, and the deep hope of Christmas. We light our chalice tonight with the words of Reverend Kilian. So come, Christmas, the most needed of seasons. Come with the reminder that love does not depend on perfection, but on willingness to risk connection. Come into the unready manger of our hearts, that we may feel the warmth of new life and give flesh to the promise of hope that cries to bring healing into our world. Come Christmas, come love, come hope. Be born in our ready hearts on this silent and holy night. It comes as no surprise, I imagine, that we look tonight at Christmas, past, present, and future, to locate ourselves in relationship with the larger arc of time, and to ask, how do we understand Christmas in this most unusual of years? We begin with Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It's a timeless tale of the spirit of Christmas and the love that lives inside each one of us, even when it's sometimes hard to see. You might not know that Dickens was a Unitarian Universalist for part of his life and aligned with this faith tradition in many ways throughout his life. It's been told that Dickens joined the Unitarian chapel in London because it was his opinion that Unitarians practiced charity and toleration while others only preached it. It's actually believed as well that he wrote A Christmas Carol while attending the Unitarian chapel. And this story appeared during a time of great economic upheaval in England. Poverty troubled Dickens deeply and personally. He was forced to work at a young age to pay off his imprisoned father's debts. In 1853, when he gave his first public reading of A Christmas Carol, he demanded that free seats be reserved for the working poor so that they could attend as well. So as you can see in the story, Dickens felt strongly that every person can play a part in relieving the suffering of others. But I also love the story because he paints these clearly lost and troubled souls, and then he provides space for them to choose something different, to find meaning and purpose beyond themselves. A Christmas Carol offered and continues to offer hope in the form of the Universalist side of our heritage, that overwhelming belief that all are worthy and all are loved. And that reminder keeps resonating in this season. When we think all is lost, in comes opportunity in the form of ghosts or hope or faith. And such is the role of Christmas, reminding us that we're so much more than our most difficult moments, so much better when connected with each other, and so much more at peace when we act from a place of love.
O maiden most gentle and tender, receive of Mary the mother of Jesus the King. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave be glad at this Christmas, we pray. Sing praise to the Savior, sing endless Ave. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria.
Come gather round and I will tell you a story. The story begins on a cold Christmas Eve. Old Ebenezer Scrooge is sitting in his counting house, counting his piles of gold coins. "Merry Christmas, Uncle," his nephew calls out. "Won't you join us for Christmas dinner tomorrow night?" "Bah," said Scrooge. "Humbug." That was one of his favorite things to say. He said it to the men who arrived later, asking him for a donation for charity. He said it to the boy who came to his door trying to sing Christmas carols. And he said it to his clerk, Bob Cratchit, when he asked for the day off on Christmas. "You'd better come here the next day early if you expect to pick my pocket every December 25th. Now that night, Scrooge was visited by the ghost of his business partner, Jacob Marley, who had died 7 years ago. And he was there with a warning. He was dragging his long, heavy chains that were weighed down by the greed and miserly meanness that he had carried with him in his life. He told Scrooge that he would be visited that night by 3 spirits. So as the church bells struck 1 a.m., the spirit of Christmas past arrived to take him on a journey. They visited an old school where they saw little Ebenezer sitting all alone as his classmates had gone home for the holidays. And old Scrooge wept at the sight of this little sad boy all alone on Christmas. They visited another Christmas where they saw Scrooge as a young man sitting next to a young lady, and she was telling him goodbye. "It matters little to you. Another idol has taken your place. It is the love of money. Goodbye." "Spirit, show me no more. I cannot bear it. Please take me home."
Each of us has a story, or many stories in our heads and hearts about Christmas past. Some quite perfect, some not, and some, in retrospect, quite perfect in their imperfection. This day, this observance, is both this beautifully set-apart day of hope and magic, and also so deeply grounded in the realities and frailties of what it means to live in this world. So with that in mind, I asked one of our own, Dorothy Devine, to share some of her Christmas past. And being a poet, she wrote a poem. So I want you to hear it from her in her own words.
Best Christmas Eve Ever, a poem by Dorothy Devine. I think it's tonight. I had hard Christmas Eves, staying in a Holiday Inn in Fall River alone, times when I was nowhere with no one, then years at an old friend's family gathering. But this is the best night because of acceptance. Suddenly, it just flies into me, a huge let go. I accept that I have lived an unexpected year with a terminal condition. All but 2 of our support group died as this year turned. They are in a better place, even if it's just the void. We are the most destructive species. Mother Nature could clear humans away. Years of strong partnership, good neighbor women year after year, cancer exercise I taught until I could not. For years, I help them and they me. Now, quarantined, I lose my CNA and PT visits due to this. Masked stepson brings homemade soup. I sleep more, talk less. Snow softens my world. I am at peace. Perhaps you don't believe me. But just now, tonight, I enjoy being an angel in disguise.
Ox and ass at Bethlehem, on a night enow of them, we were only creatures small, hid by shadows on the wall. We were swallow, moth, and mouse. The child was born in a house, and the bright eyes of us three peeped at his nativity. Hands of peace upon that place, hushed our beings for a space, quiet feet and folded wing, nor a sound of anything. With a moving star we crept closer when the baby slept. Men who guarded where he lay moved to frighten us away. But the babe awakened, made love on things that were afraid, with so sweet a gesture he called us to his company.
The church bells outside of Scrooge's window chimed again, and this time a new spirit arrived, the ghost of Christmas present. This was a jolly giant in a green robe fringed with white. He told Scrooge to touch his robe, and they were immediately transported to the home of his clerk, Bob Cratchit. The family was sitting down to their Christmas dinner. They wore threadbare clothes, and they had not much to eat, but they were very grateful for what they had. "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," said Mr. Cratchit. "God bless us, everyone," said his son, Tiny Tim. And Mr. Cratchit raised his glass and said, "A toast to Mr. Scrooge, the founder of this feast." Now, old Scrooge, who was watching outside, felt ashamed because he didn't pay his clerk well enough to afford very much for Christmas.
I was outside a few weeks ago, sitting well apart from friends, with a blazing fire pit between us. Truth be told, I was still pretty cold, but in that moment, some semblance of community, of whatever safe gathering I could imagine, It far outweighed that chill in my bones. And in that moment, I began, for maybe the first time, to think about the birth of the baby Jesus in terms of weather. How little they had in terms of material objects, how absolutely freezing they would have been in that manger. No doubt they had a fire for warmth, but that would only have taken the chill off, and it would not have kept them truly warm. I thought about the cold, hard winter ground and how maybe a blanket or two protected them, but cold would have emanated from that as well. It would not have been, I imagine, an easy birthing of a child in relative outdoors. And one can't think that and not be reminded, too, of children and families in camps on both sides of the border, in cold desert nights waiting for their miracles. Here, too, in the midst of losses unmatched in recent time, combined with a pandemic, means that many near and far, if they haven't already, will lose homes, food, security at the end of this year when federal support will cease, if not renewed. And there is hope on the horizon, as there always is. For some time, and for some people, that light came with the elections of this year, or the beginnings of the vaccinations that will help eventually to manage the spread of this virus. But for most, the gifts of this season have been ones of interconnection. The story of Christmas tells us that baby Jesus wasn't, in fact, born to a shivering man and woman in a drafty tent, but instead paints a vastly more hopeful scene. Gifts showed up to nourish the family, to keep them warm, and to keep them safe. For years, Christmas has been a respite, a reminder of the interconnection and mutuality in our lives, allowing us open expression to share our love and care for one another, and to make that tangible. The mutual aid networks that have sprung up around the city, state, and the larger world are testament to this. As we spoke of a few weeks ago, the miracles of this season, at their very core, are simply evidence of the power of love. And that's one of the gifts in this time, how in the midst of so much hardship, loss, and fear, love abounds. So many years at this time, we're deeply engaged with the expectations of this season. Have I bought the right gifts? Will my family's gathering be emotionally challenging? And in the busyness of the season, can I feel that joy so often spoken of? This year is different, and the ways we can show love are different. As we've talked about since this pandemic, again, we knew it would change us, and indeed it has. It's taught us, I believe, how to love more deeply and how to demonstrate that in all the ways we know how, not to mention new ways. So despite how different this Christmas is, or maybe because you've shown the magic of this season so well and so lovingly for so long, we're blessed by its presence. We've stayed physically apart. We've invented new ways to show love. We've demonstrated patience. And we've learned to be inventive, to drop off gifts to those in need, the drive-by visits to the ill, and all the other super creative ways we've shown love and are showing love. And that is the secret of this season. And that's the message at its core, to take care of each other, something you do ever so beautifully. So may this season of Christmas guide us for days and months, even years to come. When we lose our way, our hope, may we look back at this time and be reminded of what's possible when we live each day with the deep love that guides this season. Each Christmas Eve, as an embodied act of love, we take an offering. This year, the recipient of your generosity will be the Johnny Cake Center here in Peacedale, doing the work of feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, and treating all with the respect and dignity that they deserve. The need in Washington County and across the state is staggering, and it's worsening. Kids are going to bed hungry. Elders are going without food. It's going to take a miracle to help provide even the most basic necessities to many over the next months. And that's where you come in. I'm asking for your generosity. I've personally already made a $500 donation to Johnny Cake, and I'm asking those with means to dig deep and give generously. I ask that everyone give in ways appropriate to their means. If you look at UUCSC's website, you can see that you can pay online via a donate button, if you choose, or you can send a check here to the congregation and put Christmas Eve in the memo line. A donation representing our shared total will be made to Johnny Cake and reported back to you.
Going through the hills on a night all starry, on the way to Bethlehem. Far away I heard a shepherd boy piping, on the way to Bethlehem. Angels brought this message, dance and sing for joy that Christ the King. He is come to bring us peace on earth, and is lying cradled there at Bethlehem. Tell me, shepherd boy, piping tunes so merrily, on the way to Bethlehem. Who will hear your tunes on these hills so lonely, on the way to Bethlehem? Angels brought this message, dance and sing for joy that Christ the King. He is come to bring us peace on earth, and is lying cradled there at Bethlehem. Where is this new king, shepherd boy, piping merrily? Is he there at Bethlehem? I will find him soon by the stars shining brightly in the sky of Bethlehem. Angels brought this message, dance and sing for joy that Christ the King. He is come to bring us peace on earth, and is lying cradled there at Bethlehem. May I come with you, shepherd boy, piping merrily, come with you to Bethlehem. Pay my homage true at the new King's cradle, is it far to Bethlehem? Angels brought this message, dance and sing for joy that Christ the King. He is born this night in glory, stable yonder, born for you and Bethlehem.
And now we come to Christmas Future. We have invited some of the younger members of this congregation to share with us what they see in their Christmas future. And may their bright lights of hope shine into your home.
So in Christmas future, I think that I will be in a little wooden cottage in the woods, and I'll have kids and I'll be celebrating with my family, and we'll be listening to Christmas music around our tree while decorating it, and will be, and I think a couple ways that we'll celebrate is one of our traditions of blowing milkweed on our Christmas tree, and we pick the milkweed from outside. And our grandfather, which would be my dad right now, but in Christmas future, we would read The Night Before Christmas, a really old book, and then we would also write down what happened that Christmas and put it in our little Christmas box. And I'll be an astronomer too, and I'll show my kids the stars and the moon and planets and outer space because I love stars and outer space right now.
So, in the future, hopefully the whole idea of Christmas will still be going, and hopefully everybody will be home for Christmas, hanging out with their family, decorating the Christmas tree, baking cookies, and putting out milk and cookies for Santa. All that good traditional stuff. But mainly, hopefully everybody is still in the Christmas spirit and knows the real meaning of Christmas, which is not just about the presents. Although the presents are awesome and cool. It's about helping your community and giving to those less fortunate than you and making the happy memories with your friends and family.
As we check back in on our story, we find Scrooge back at home with the church bells chiming again. The ghost of Christmas future has arrived. He took him to a busy business street where wealthy merchants clinked money in their pockets as they rushed along. One group of people stood talking about someone who had died, but no one planned to go to the funeral because no one cared. Scrooge wondered who this could be. The ghost of Christmas future brought Scrooge to a churchyard and pointed to a gravestone. Ebenezer Scrooge was written there. "Spirit," he cried, tightly clutching at its robe. "Hear me, I am not the man I was. Good Spirit, I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach." Old Ebenezer was relieved to find himself suddenly back in his bedroom with the light of the sun shining through his windows. When he found out it was Christmas Day, he was delighted. He hadn't missed it. "I don't know what to do," cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath. "I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy, as giddy as a child. A Merry Christmas to everybody, and Happy New Year to all of the world." He danced and scampered around his house, overwhelmed with gratitude that he could start over and set things right. He ordered the biggest prize turkey to be sent to the Cratchit house for Christmas dinner. He made a big donation to the men who had asked him the day before, and he arrived at his nephew's house and joyfully celebrated Christmas with his family. He became as good a friend, as good a boss, as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in that good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. And so the story ends. We got to watch the transformation of Scrooge from a miserly old man to a joyful one, who celebrated not only Christmas, but all of humanity and his community. What a gift he was given to be able to look back over his life and see what he was missing out on in his present, and to see the shadows of his possible future. And what a blessing that he chose to change. As we contemplate our own futures, I know that we all yearn for the end of this virus, for a time when we can simply hug our friends and loved ones again. That simple act of a hug has never been so meaningful and so valuable to me as it is this year. And even as we stay rooted in our present, finding the blessings and the wisdom of this year's Christmas time, we look forward to a future when we can be together again.
smell like a meadow newly shorn. Let us on the sudden come and see the God's white wings must fragrant be. 'Tis his born us quickening birth, his life and gospel bring birth to heaven and the earth. We see him come and know him ours, with his sunshine and his showers, turns the patient ground to flowers, turns all the patient ground to flowers. The time of the world is come, and fate is with our Lord to welcome him, to welcome him. The nobler part of all the house here is the heart which we will give and bequeath this holy and this ivy wreath, to do him honor, who's the King and Lord of all his heavenly. What sweeter music can we bring than a carol for to sing the birth of this our heavenly King? The birth of this our
Please join me in the spirit of prayer as we move towards the conclusion of our time together. The words are by the Reverend Kristen Grassel Schmidt, entitled Christmas Eve Prayer. Source of all gifts, giver of all peace, on this silent and holy night, we celebrate again our deep faith that this venture we call existence is not meaningless, is not hopeless. We celebrate once again that though the world is mired in war and hatred, prejudice and greed, the human family was always meant for better things. As the earth yields to the cold of winter, as our bodies yield to the tiredness of night, as our skepticism yields to the joy of the season of family, friends, and fellowship, the world will also one day yield to the power of love. For the light of love, our lived and our embodied love, shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it. God, whose other name is love, on this silent and holy night, rekindle us in curious wonder about how love's light comes to birth in, with, and among us. Rekindle our childlike excitement about how that newborn love might grow and change, challenge and transform us and the world around us. Just as a single day recalls the noonday sun, may our time in worship, this silent and holy night, remind us ever of the power of almighty love. Amen.